This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Thanks again, everybody, for coming out tonight on the 18th. Anyway, I think we should start by just approving the November meeting minutes. Did you get a chance to look over these minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody want to?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, all in favor? All right, great.
We're going to need a note taker tonight because
yeah.
Maud is not
Here, I just realized that.
I can take them again.
Okay, great.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Felicia.
Felicia. Anybody have any public speak?
No.
All right, then maybe we should just go straight into the updates.
Great. So we've been talking about Art Walk. And actually, before I jump in, I'll just say we have a big meeting tonight. Here on the next one, organizational updates, that should say ECA budget report update. And I'm going to just be sharing the operating budget and proposing a few items to vote on as a follow-up to last month's meeting. So I'll give some updates. I know that you all have some updates for the programs, but I just want us to be aware of that regarding time. So we have continued to talk about Art Walk. At our last meeting, we talked about creating a survey and sharing it with regularly participating venues and formerly regularly participating venues. And Tracy and I worked on a survey. It was sent to like 36 people, and we received, as of 3:41 this afternoon, 14 responses, which is pretty substantial.
Yeah.
And we can talk about this. I think it's really interesting. I feel like maybe share because they were long, so.
But wait, we have till the 22nd, right?
You have till the 22nd.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah, I've sent out the
No
questions
worries.
to all the OXBO people, and I'm like tallying out of everyone's.
Yeah, so I asked people to respond by the 22nd so that it was enough. I'll be working, aside from a few holidays, I'll be working, and it's a kind of a good time to dive deep into this kind of thing. But, people were very receptive to changing the day. They talked about what they thought was going well, what they thought could be improved, what are their challenges and concerns, should Art Walk continue as an event in Easthampton, and is there anything else you'd like for us to know? And it was really, it's already like very helpful and just very clear. It just feels like people, as we've known, but it's helpful to see them all in relationship to each other, like people feel really strongly and, are having their own experience, and it's helpful. I find it very helpful to see them all in relationship to each other. So what I would like to do is after the 22nd, I'll share all the results with you all, and my thinking was to invite everyone who responded, or everyone I sent the email to come to a convening so we can just have a discussion about, based on this, what we feel are the best next steps. I want that to be a community, like a collective process, rather than just making decisions that seem maybe apparent to me, but might not land well. And I also feel strongly like it's not just about numbers here. Yeah, I think there's some really interesting feedback.
So is the feedback on this it's just from all of the,
Yeah, it doesn't say. I could look to see who said what.
Right.
We made it optional, whether people give their name. Most people did, but I wanted people to feel very free, to be very free. So I made that optional, and for the people who gave their names, I could see who said what, and could share that. But as far as just like efficiency for our meeting tonight, I thought an overview was pretty helpful. And there are some things here that aren't correct. So as you read through them, like, we can, I won't get into all the details now, but I think it would be important to kind of clarify ahead of any discussion.
And this was just the venues, past and present.
This was just the venues.
Yeah.
And so I will also share that we had talked about at our last meeting doing 2 different surveys, one just the venues and one the general public. And our last meeting was right before the next art walk. We were talking about putting something together like within the next 2 days. As time got closer, I just felt like, and doing something in person, like, I just felt like I didn't want to potentially add any anxiety that things were changing. I wanted people to be able to enjoy Art Walk. I spoke with Steve and Felicia. How did that all?
Well, you just let us know that you weren't putting the survey out at the last art walk.
Yeah, and then we had talked about including a survey to the greater public with an ECA impact report. In 2019, I made like a year-end list of accomplishments, and I really like this idea of an impact report. I think there are questions about like what we're doing, and we know that we're doing a lot, and we're having like a deep and far reach. And so I think we can talk about that in the organizational updates. It's on the agenda, but I printed out my outline for that. I'd love your feedback. And I've already spoken to our graphic designer, Sloan Tomlinson, who's going to, I gave him all the specs and what I want, and if we, want to print it, but including that in a newsletter that's just a very clear focus on like broad strokes, like the numbers, like how many people served, blah, 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 blah. And including in that, like save the dates for upcoming events in 2024. We know them all, so to include that, and then to also include a link to a survey. And we can focus on, I don't want it to be a gigantic survey because I want people to actually respond, but we can ask, have like a few programs. Art walk, like how do you feel? It can be, I think, a different language and tone, but to gather that input more as like supportive to the venues, because I want to think of them both together. I don't want to, like, if everyone, I want to make sure the venues feel supported to run your programming.
Yeah, I think it would be great to include some of the questions from the venue survey because, like, for example, I'd love to be able to compare the answers for the question on what days of the month would be the optimal time and see if there's matching up, because if the venues say second Saturday seems to be very popular, but the public says something different, we don't want to just change without making sure there's alignment there. So I think it would be great to have like some questions for important info like that we want to find out some answers. So I agree with you, like not to have a giant survey, but to make sure we curate the questions accordingly.
Yeah, I kind of thought it would be similar.
Yeah.
That was my take on it.
Yeah, sounds good.
I realize this might be a bunch of confirmation bias, but there definitely seems to be an Eastworks issue that seems to be, especially in the last two questions,
Yep,
where people in Eastworks are feeling abandoned.
yes,
Which, it's easy in a big building to feel lost in a big building, but especially on a night where you're trying to put something together and it's empty.
Yeah.
But there definitely seems, like I said, could be confirmation bias, but like there's definitely something there.
yeah. No, it feels really important. People gave really thoughtful feedback. I feel really glad for the participation. And it's, yeah, we clearly need to take a very close look at it all. And Art Walk is now on hiatus, and our first one will reconvene in
February.
February.
How was, I wasn't able to be at Art Walk this past week. How was it? Was there good attendance or?
It was pretty slow. It really was.
I think people are doing holiday stuff and.
Yeah, we had the O-Tones at the Oxbow, and they're like Mary Witt and two other women, and it was like really nice music, and it was so slow. It was just like embarrassing, kind of. So, what do you do, right?
Yeah.
And I don't, like, people have been sending me back replies to the survey, which I've just been like getting, you know, but there are a lot of interesting ideas. And one person was saying, like, well, in Northampton they used to have banners, like all the venues that participated had like Arts Walk, you know, or Northampton Second Friday or whatever. But I don't know, it's kind of like, it's so hard because there are 40 people that have, and everyone's saying different things. So I was sort of like, I wanted to look for a majority. It's not. But I can't really make up tables like this.
Well, this is, Google did that.
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
I'll look for.
I would really just ask, like, for the people who help make it happen,
Yeah.
like, this was really not intended for a broad public.
Yeah.
It was more for people with the direct experience of, like, running it
Right.
and like producing it. So I would maybe, you know, look to see what whoever the volunteers are who work those nights, and
Yeah.
might be a helpful way to like pare things down, and then we can, you know, we'll send out a broader, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
And we are going to be getting banners.
Yes.
Okay.
I did talk to our graphic designer. It has been like so much harder than anyone would
I
think.
don't know why it's so hard, but it.
Yeah, like a lot of the local groups don't do it the same way anymore, and that's not in line with how we do it. So I had a great meeting with our graphic designer, and I said, I want to hire you to find a good group and do the specs, and I told him exactly what we want on the banner, and that was with input from the Cottage Street Cultural District, from like a number of participating, you know, it's just very clear cut. And he said, no problem. And I told him I wanted to have the banners in my hands by the end of no later than January 31st, so that we have plenty of time before her walk to get them distributed and all of that. So, yeah.
Great. All right, so should we move on to public art?
Yeah. So since our last meeting, I believe this happened since our last meeting, the public art subcommittee, so we had an open call for a climate change and environmental education focused project on Emerald Place in New City. And we met with the public, we got 8 applications, really solid. We didn't expect a lot. We expected few, relatively few, but from very experienced people. And that's exactly what we got, because it was a very particular kind of ask. And we got some really excellent applications, and we all met. We had a review right here in this room. We went through everything, and we unanimously selected, the committee unanimously selected a potter and poet, Michael Medeiros, who took a lot of time to, explore New City. He has connections with New City. He does a lot of work with Easthampton Clay and in Eastworks, and has done work with us for Poetry Month. And there's going to be a lot of like engaging the immediate neighborhood with storytelling, and people will be making clay, tiles, and like creating objects that will be installed on Emerald Place in New City. So we are, all of the people who weren't selected were notified. I've met with Michael a few times now, and we are going to be, we talked about doing an announcement in the new year in correlation with upcoming events. So this whole project has to be completed by like May. Well, he's just so the whole thing with the project, it's not going to be made and installed, it's proposing an idea. And so I imagine there will probably be either 2 or 3 community engagement activities, and we want to include them all with the announcement so that it's very active and engaging. We'll do a little profile about him and let people know how they can participate and be involved. Another update with public art is that Jana Ugoni and Piper Ferreso, who were the artists selected for the Cottage Street volunteer sculpture, they are making the sculpture. They're working on it. I had a great meeting with Piper a couple of weeks ago and got some nice updates. And we are aiming for installation in late April, early May. We will be planning the Public Art Committee is planning some sort of unveiling celebration in May. We will also, that's like open to the public and will be a really nice community event along the boardwalk. And then we're also planning on having a ribbon cutting for the sculpture at Cultural Chaos, which is on Saturday, June 8th. We didn't want to combine them because they feel like two very different. We want the first one to be very intimate and very, it's also a memorial. And so creating space that would really honor that, and then having like a larger public celebration in June. And then the other thing I think is important to mention is that the Public Art Subcommittee is also talking about having our first since the pandemic. We used to have an event, we did it 2 times, 2018 and 2019. No, 2017 and 2018. I can't remember. Pre-pandemic. It's called Have a Heart for Public Art. It's a brunch. Oh, yeah. It's a brunch fundraiser, and we had done it at Galaxy both times. Casey Douglas very generously opened up on a Sunday when they're not open. He also very generously donated 100% of the food, and so 100% of the proceeds, we pitched in and helped bus tables, and they, anything through the bar was all theirs. And we had 2 really sweet, beautiful events. And the second one we just looked at it, like a little more than $2,000 or a little less than 2,000 give or take. I can't remember offhand. We just talked about it 3 weeks ago, but yeah. So we're looking to do another one of those. So I will be in touch with Casey to find out about dates and times and what kind of arrangement, if any, would work for him. And if, we're all understanding that that's a huge ask and maybe that doesn't work anymore. but open to considering other venues if that doesn't work out. But we thought we would go there first, and we were thinking about February.
Yeah,
or
kind
March.
of in
February,
correlation with Valentine's Day.
But it
Kind of
depends
have a
on-
heart for public art, and it's not designed to be like the only thing, big fundraiser. It's enough that we bring in money, but the bulk of our, as you know, the bulk of our fundraising has been grants now, because Pascalina has been able to get some really great grants. So it's a way to engage the public and have them sort of part of the process and feel like we're doing some of those events like we used to do, that people could show up and have a good time, and which I think is important too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that will happen. Anything else? So Easthampton Cultural Council did meet, and we did do our voting meeting. So I would like to see if you, Felicia, would give us the update on that. Felicia is got voted in as the chair of the ECA Council, and we're all excited about that.
Yep, so we met last week. I am the new co-chair, so Casey, who you just mentioned, is, I think, finishing up his term in the spring of next year. So along with Nancy Natal, who's the treasurer, Sean, Maud's husband actually, who is going to be our new secretary. So we have a new board, which is very exciting. And we went through and voted on all of the applications, which were about 55 applications total. And we had just over $18,000 to give out. And so I think it was 28 total folks that we ended up deciding to grant to, which is great. And, basically ranges from, I forget the exact total, the smallest amount, but I want to say it's like $300 to a couple $1,000s. So it's a nice range, and it's a really nice mix of different music, dance, humanities type stuff, a lot of, again, public stuff. And so we're in the process right now of informing the folks who did not get the grants. And then once that's been completed, which should be, I think, actually today, then we're going to go ahead and start informing the folks who did get the awards. And each award will have a liaison from the council committee. And so then we'll start working with them to get them all set, ready to go, and make sure that they can actually do what we are awarding the funds for. And we're going to be meeting again next year in January. And I think the idea is that we'll have some kind of gathering in February, March to just celebrate the fact that these folks have gotten the awards, and that we'll be able to continue the process. So
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's great.
So we're really excited about it.
Yeah, and it was, we rolled it, the meeting went really well. It happened fairly fast,
Yeah, it was
which
pretty
was
smooth.
good. And so everybody seemed to be on the same page, which is always good. So it was a good meeting,
Yeah.
That's great. Nice work.
Yeah.
Congrats. That's exciting.
There's some really cool projects going on in town, so we were able to fund some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
So updates on ECA Gallery?
Yeah. So Tracy and Maud and I just met to review. We had 48 applications for what was originally 5 slots available in 2024. So almost 10 times the number of slots. We got a really wonderful application pool, all, mostly, I would say, very strong in terms of the work and also just the effort that people put into their applications. And what we did, so notifications have not yet gone out. We met last
week.
Wednesday,
Yeah.
I think. Monday, whatever it was, Monday. But I'll be calling all of the people that we chose. So we selected artists for the 5 available slots. And then we do the Art as a Gift market at ECA Gallery in partnership with Bigger Frame in both November and December. So we talked to Jean-Pierre, and we chose 2 artists who often participate in city space markets, who applied, and whose work can, lean toward a market-oriented audience. So we added 2 slots by having them on the walls during that time. And then we also selected artists for February and March of 2025, which is also helpful because we usually are making decisions in December. So it's a very quick turnaround to say, are you free in February? But we feel really good about what came in and what we chose. I feel hesitant to say too much more about any individual applicants because they haven't been notified yet. And I always call the people who are asking to participate first to make sure that all is good, and then get their approval before sending out the other letters. But we had fun, and it was a positive process all around. Yeah, there's something else, but I'll talk about it with the budget. Oh, and we did decide that we wanted to do the 2nd annual ECA Invitational. This year's was very successful and positive, so we're going to plan to do that again in October of 2024.
Great. Let's move on to the Cottage Street Cultural District visioning session.
Yeah, so I had mentioned to you all that we were going to be doing a Cottage Street Cultural District visioning session. Tracy, Jeff, and Maud were all able to attend, which was great to have ECA representation. We don't have to have like a long discussion about this, but I did want to share what came of it. We had a great representation from Cottage Street businesses, from ECA, from the municipality, and we met for more than 2 hours, and we had a presentation and kind of just reviewed what the Cottage Street Cultural District is, what our values are. It's all on our website, but it had been a long time since anyone had looked at that, and it was nice to revisit that together. And we talked about strengths and also what to improve upon. And I just found it really interesting how much feedback came in around the businesses themselves and also infrastructure, like what is going well and what needs improvement. We were really framing the conversation around arts and culture, but it's all, of course, very integrated, and these things really affect each other. So I found this to be very helpful. I reviewed it with the members of the Cottage Street Cultural District at our meeting last week, and it was just affirming how people felt, but we thought it would be really good to keep these in mind to help guide our decisions moving forward. And I also spoke with them about the Art Walk survey, because there's a lot of overlap there about how to improve, getting more visitors to the district. And we've started planning Cultural Chaos 2024. So I just wanted to share that with you all.
Great, thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to the organizational updates now. The budget report. A nice color-coded.
All right, so at last month's meeting, I was telling you all about the results of our fundraising efforts, and I have each of the individual grants listed here in case there's any question. And it came up that it would be really helpful to see an operational budget, so we had some kind of context for how to best, to guide our decisions and to have some sense of the overall financial ecosystem of ECA. And we have not done a budget review with the committee since early pandemic. And I was talking about it with Jeff, like things really changed, we pivoted, we moved, we shifted our programming. And so I'm really glad to be having this conversation again. I tend to present budgets in like 3 years. So like for some of you this will be interesting, for others of you, don't worry about it. But just having some sense of context and growth and development, I learned in my work in nonprofits that like numbers really tell a story. And there are many stories like here on this piece of paper. So we're not going to talk at all about the 2019 and 2020, that's just there for your reference. The fiscal year 24 actuals, so the way that the municipal budget works, our fiscal year is from July 1st every year to June 30th. And so we are in fiscal year 2024 because it ends on June 30th. And these are actual numbers. So things might change in that we might get more money, but everything that's listed there is money we actually have and money we've budgeted for spending. That doesn't mean all that money will get spent. It's just I carried over what we all had decided as a group in 2020, and I made some increases based on the cost of, like, our MailChimp platform is more expensive than it used to be. So like any change in number, like rent at Old Town Hall, utilities, so anything in the fiscal year 24 actuals, that is true. That's not like what I hope will happen or what I want to happen. That's like what's going on. What I did, and I'm just explaining what we're looking at here, in the fiscal year 24 projected, I think another way of saying that is like proposed. I'm proposing new expenditures for this fiscal year. And we're going to talk about the things that are highlighted in yellow. And I highlighted them in yellow under expenses, just the name of what we're going to be talking about. And then any change in cost is reflected in that leftmost column. And there are 4 things on the list. And I am, of course, actually, if there are any questions before we begin that discussion, if anything seems unclear, let me know.
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
For the rent, is that relating to the space we used to have in Eastworks, or is that?
No, so that we spent $0 on for
okay.
rent. We pay rent in Old Town Hall.
Oh, okay, got it.
And Ted's shaking his head up and down.
I can't get my head around it.
I
After
know.
all these years, it's still like, what?
Yeah, it's a city-owned building that's leased by City Space. And ECA, as a municipal organization, rents space from them. And
Okay.
when I was new, I spent a lot of time talking to the mayor at the time and the planner at the time. And this is, as long as we will be there, that's the way it is. And we're on a long-term lease now. And that is how it works.
So I'm just curious, because I saw that it went up a little bit, so is that like accounted for in the long
Yeah.
lease? Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Landlords.
Yeah. I have a question. What goes into the youth art education? What is that all? I mean, I know what it is, but
Yeah, we got a grant from the Collaborative for Educational Services for $15,000.
Okay.
And that's why it says $15,000
Yeah, okay.
because to Felicia's question last month, it's like, what of this money is available and what of this money is not available, is accounted for, is a better way of saying it. So I plugged in and like under our programs, 15,000 for youth art education. Not all of the money from that account has been spent yet.
Right.
So there are still things that we said we were going to do that we will do, but that money is being held for that. And we do want to do that by the end of fiscal year 2024. And for example, public art installations, so $10,000 of that is going to the Cottage Street volunteer sculpture. 5,000 of that, this is something I did under the income section, under grants, so there was $5,000 via the planning department through an MVP grant, Massachusetts Vulnerability Program, Protection, something, where $5,000 is a small piece of that big grant. It's through the planning department, but it's paying for our Emerald Place public art project. So that's where that 15,000 is. So there's like all these numbers. That's why like I have all the grants listed out, like they're all accounted for, and that's how I'm reconciling the expenses against the income. And then if you go down to the very bottom line, that net income, there's so what's listed under the actuals is like almost $28,000. About 20,000 of that is part of the ARPA funds, and that has to go toward programming that supports intergenerational exchange. And I have some ideas, but that is an very important piece of that. Like programming that engages elders and youth at the same time.
And that's a one-time grant? Like
That's a one-time thing. And it's matching funds that are correlated with the Youth Arts Initiative. And those were the terms expressed by the mayor. And I believe we have until the end of fiscal year 2025 to spend that. I will double check because all of a sudden we're in our new year.
Can I propose that we make a significant increase to the ECA advertising budget? Because as a percentage of its projected revenue, it's a minuscule percentage. Most nonprofits that I've worked with, advertising is 5 to 10% of their actual gross.
Yeah, we can have conversations about any of these things. Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
even when like, you couple ECA advertising with Art Walk advertising, it's still, in my mind, very small compared to what I believe it should be.
When I arrived, the advertising budget was gigantic. And before I worked here, I was running a nonprofit in New York where there was literally, and we were bringing in $735,000 a year and had like a staff of 22 people. Like it was a broader reach.
Yep.
and we had $0 for advertising. But we ran excellent programming and created relationships with like the New York Times and like all these local media outlets, and had stories run. So that was kind of the thinking behind it. I'm not saying no, I'm just
Totally.
giving you a little bit of like a history and a context. What we do spend money on for advertising is social media ads. And they're very trackable. Like, we know we're reaching a lot of people and that people are coming. The radio stations have given us a very good discount, and we do $500 with them for Cultural Chaos. And then we do have a number of stories in the paper throughout the year as like part of the promotion. So I would just add that printing includes lawn signs, posters, so it's more than just the advertising.
Yep.
There are some like print material, but absolutely. And I have updates regarding advertising tonight to present to all of you to vote on. But I do think it is like a really important conversation.
Okay.
So, just to see if I'm on the right track here. So if we were to approve all of these new expenses in the yellow, and then accepting that like $20,000, it has to be like earmarked for intergenerational projects. So there would be about $2,000 extra, $2,600 extra on top of all of this money.
In terms of money that's being generated and coming in now, we also have about, I would say about $14,000 in our donations account, which is like for us to make decisions about how we want to spend it. I will say historically, we kept a $30,000 emergency fund that we chose to use for the ECA grants initiative at the start of COVID. So I would just strongly encourage us, like, things are, money is coming in, like, this is great. And you can look to see what kind of money was coming in 2020 and 2019. It was like a really different number. If you just look at like grants, like, it's very different. So I don't, we can talk. I don't want to just like be spending all the money, like, we could have a conversation about that. But yeah, there's like.
But then like this, so I guess it's like, do we want to try to build that rainy day fund up, or should we just spend all of this? In my mind, I think we should probably spend the extra $2,600 that we have in addition to all of this. And I think advertising would be a good place for that money. Because we do have $14,000 left in a rainy day fund. But I guess that's a decision for
Yeah,
the rest of the
and we have a quorum, and we can absolutely talk about that.
I was just, gallery sales, is that money that people bought artwork, or what is that?
Yeah, that was sort of like what we averaged each year in gallery sales.
Wow.
However,
It was that much.
we voted to do away with getting a commission. So ECA used to take 25%, which is very, if you know anything about exhibiting in a gallery, it's very generous. Usually it's 50% is very common, or 40%.
Zero.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
I
that's
take
great.
25.
Yeah, that's great. Most local galleries and most galleries take 50%. Sometimes 40, sometimes 60. And because it's such a big deal for artists to sell work, and we really ask them to do quite a lot in terms of marketing their event. Like, we do what we do. We change the policy so that we take 0%, and they're welcome to make a donation at the end of a show if they make sales or whatever So that is no longer part of the income. It shouldn't be.
But that's
Is
a
it?
large sum. I guess I'm just surprised that we've sold, that much has sold.
It would usually be from like 1 or 2 shows would sell a lot. And yeah, it wasn't like an every month thing
Right,
at all.
no,
It was like
yeah.
a total of,
But still.
it averaged 500.
That's great, though, that people are selling their art.
Quick question. You mentioned the $14,000 roughly in the donations. Is that the same as the donations that are listed out in the income section?
No, that's not, so this is kind of like the money flow of what's coming in and what's coming out. That's not represented on this budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, hiring a website administrator where we previously haven't. What great things are we going to do with the website?
So I had a great meeting with Bronwyn Hodgkinson recently, and Bronwyn runs Valley Arts newsletter, if you're not familiar with her. And she also is a web designer. She is a website developer.
She used to be on this committee too.
Was she? It was before my time, but yeah. And she's a website administrator, and she works with a number of local organizations in this capacity, including the Community Foundation of Western Mass, including like the Hilltown Artists Group that organizes different open studio events. And she's predominantly worked with WordPress, which is what we have. She is a web administrator for a number of Cider House built websites, which is what we have. So she's very experienced with like being called upon to make, like there are very basic things that I don't know how to do. And I had and the other thing that I really love about the idea of working with Bronwyn, she knows ECA, she loves ECA, she knows Easthampton, she like understands our reality, our capacity. Any changes, you send them to her in an email. She's happy to get on the phone if anything needs further explanation, and she does all the updates within a week. And if anything is like super time sensitive, let her know. She's usually able to get it done more quickly than that. Her rates are $55 an hour for this kind of work, and I budgeted for I always get embarrassed about math, like on video. Like
You're like,
in front of
whatever
people.
1,200 is.
It was like 11. So it was like, no, I don't think it is.
No, I'm kidding, like 20 hours.
It's like, I had done 10,
24 hours.
Yeah.
24 hours a year. Yeah, for little things. And then she can also work on larger projects. So, for example, we want to update the photos on the website, like the standing photos on the web pages, because they were all taken in 2017. Like those spaces don't all exist anymore. Like some of those people moved away, and many other people aren't represented on our website. So Tracy has agreed very generously very generously offered to take new photos. And I was telling Bronwyn about that. So I'm like, can Tracy send you a bunch of photos and like you give her the specs and then you'll make it be there? And she said yes. If we wanted her to build out new web pages, she can do that. That is not really included here. She said for like the little piecemeal stuff, I think this will be more than enough, and I just thought put it on the budget so we don't have to have lots of conversations about it for things like this. But if there was ever a project where we wanted to like have a new look or a new whatever, that those larger projects would get priced out by the project, and like we would have a conversation about whatever that was. So
So it's kind of like roughly like 2 hours a month of just like, random stuff here and there, support. And then I guess the question that I was thinking is, let's say we get to like midway through the year and you're like, oh, we haven't been using a lot of these hours. Would it be a discussion of like, oh, we have like $1,000, let's just use that for a project first, as opposed to saying we should add in more? Or do you think we should build in more for potential project spending at this point? Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I think I like the idea that we would have a conversation if there's a larger project. I think that would be a conversation. Like, what's happening that we would want that to support it in that way. Like under graphic design, I have $1,000. That's like, we don't usually spend that much to pay Sloan. So I think that becomes like a conversation. I just feel like it's a starting point for getting us back into this habit and rhythm. But I'm really open, like how people feel, if we want to do like a 6-month check-in and kind of see where things are at.
Because I was thinking like if you already know that we have like a couple things you want to do,
We have
like the
things now
photos,
that
then
are-
I would say like let's just think about whether this includes those projects or if this needs to be a different number. Only because like if we know we want to update the photos, then we should just go ahead and build that in,
Okay.
I'm going to probably speak for Bronwyn, even though I can't, but most web developers, me being one, we would have a retainer. And this would probably be her retainer agreement where there's things that are covered,
Right.
which is maintenance and small upkeep. But my contract basically says, if this is new work, then it's billed extra all the time. It's not included in the retainer.
Yeah, so
Which
that
is
was
probably
my
the same of
thinking
what
is
she's
because
doing.
this is like retainer
But
fee,
even
so
this is super cheap for a retainer.
totally, yeah. And so I'm just thinking like if
Sorry,
we
Robin.
know one project is definitely going to be photos and updating, then it would be nice to know like roughly what would that be or what would her fee be, because then if we're thinking about building that in, let's just build it in,
Yeah. I was going to say, I think we're paying more than twice what we should be doing on hosting, personally, because $800 for how many websites?
One.
One website? We should be paying like $300.
So again, so that is a number we haven't ever spent.
Okay,
It's what I have been told it costs.
we can talk.
Well, we pay for web hosting, it's much less than that.
Okay,
But this was a Cider House number for like any kind of assistance, but they will
okay.
help and not always bill. So it's what I feel like,
It sounds like a built-in redundancy, because if Bronwyn is doing this.
Yeah.
we have
well, yeah,
Cypress
that's part of
as
it,
a
so there's a
backup.
shift.
I was just
Yeah,
going to
so
say, I
the
would
money
give
will
like
start to shift
her.
around.
Yeah,
because
we'll
we'll
give money to
have
her.
less for Cider House, we'll do more with Bronwyn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I, just so everybody's clear, I had a lovely conversation with Cider House, and we've talked about things shifting as they get busier and have more projects and a further reach. So it's all, the community partnership piece has been tended to.
I guess what I'm saying is like, I'd rather see us spend less money on hosting and more towards upkeep, maintenance, things that Broadway would be doing to push the content envelope
Right.
on that side, if we can. Because I can't imagine it needs much on the support side.
When money doesn't get spent, does that get rolled into this account with the $14,000 donation? Is that all the money, or do we
Yeah.
have other money somewhere?
No, so any accounts with like extra money in them, or if that's like our account.
Okay.
The nice thing, for all the new folks, the nice thing about that account is that it's not part of the city budget. we don't have to spend that by a fiscal year unless we have to because of the terms of a particular grant project. But that's like, it really is like a piggy bank.
Great.
Do you have grant, like, projects already lined up for the youth art education, or do you solicit? I know this isn't it's a little bit off topic, but I'm just curious, how does that money get, how do you decide on what
Yeah, so
funding?
that money, we had always done, I used to get a grant through the Massachusetts Cultural Council for a youth arts initiative. It was $2,500 a year. We did amazing things with $2,500 a year. And then you couldn't apply for that after 3 years. That's how we got into this community investment portfolio grant, which is this operational funding. So it's like every year now I'm like, we got $7,500, we got $6,000. Like that just can be put toward anything. I applied for a grant from the Collaborative for Educational Services for $15,000, and that's what that was. I will say, in order to do youth programming well as I would want to be able to do it while doing everything else we're doing, it's tough. These grants were applied for years ago, and and we can talk about this, I think there are lots of other ways to engage the high school, especially if we have ARPA funding that, there's an intergenerational requirement. But taking on additional programming and additional projects, we've hired other educators. It really requires just a certain amount of being present that can be really tricky, considering all we're doing with the capacity that we have. I mean, that's the thing about program grants. I like to apply for them because we exist through our programming, but you get the grant, you have to do the program, which is like the good news, and it's also a real reality of, all that's involved. So we got to be careful, like what we wish for a little bit. And my instinct is to just pause at least on like running a particular program at the high school. I think also like coordinating with their schedule, like just some of the realities of like after school and when it falls and when it's a little tricky with like system that aren't exactly the same.
And it's designated for a high school program that involves working with intergenerational. Okay.
Yeah, every year it's been a different project.
Okay.
And they've been fun and great and wonderful, but it does feel like a certain kind of lift that my instinct is to just like pause and really try to improve our touchstone events and programs before taking new things on. But again, this is all up for discussion.
Since Bronwyn's name came up, and she's still publishing the Valley Arts newsletter. Do we have a link to that on our website? Oh,
So there is a section on our website that we introduced during the pandemic that was about resources, like resources for artists, and they're included in that. Easthampton Cultural Council is included in that. There's like a list of local, regional, and I think some maybe national groups. I can't recall. Hello.
I'm very sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
Is there another accessible entrance to get onto the first floor? Because the elevator's out of order.
Oh my gosh.
Would that be a no?
Let me think. I believe the elevator is required.
There's only one elevator.
And there's only one entrance.
I'll do a quick circle around the building, see if I can find anything. If not, do as well as.
What meeting are you looking to go to?
The skate park, dog park.
Oh,
meeting.
okay. I can run up and ask someone there.
I've got someone in there. I'm just about to text him.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Thank you very much.
Let us
And I
know if you need
apologize.
any additional help,
Thank you. I
really.
apologize for the interruption.
It's very good. Are you gonna say something?
Nope, good.
Okay, so I had another question. So with the Porch Fest line item,
Mm-hmm.
is that reflecting not giving honorariums to musicians?
So, yeah, I wanted to talk about, this is a conversation. So all these
Yeah.
things are conversations.
Yeah, no. I mean, you know how we've talked about this ad nauseum.
Yes,
so.
yes. So the FY24 actual under Porch Fest, it was a $3,600 event. That includes what we paid the musicians, that includes porta potties, that includes marketing. That's what it came out to be. And then we're talking about doing a Porch Fest in the spring, and we're talking about like Porch Fest was amazing. We want to do more Porch Fest, and how to do it in a way that's sustainable. Like, what if we have, like, historically Porch Fest doesn't pay musicians? That's not what ECA does historically. This year it was $250 a band, and we had talked about maybe like $100 a band, which is what that is based on. Now, that was based on like 12 bands at 100 plus the extra things, so that can change. And yeah, so these are conversations. Like, I don't think it's a great idea to scale, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the only thing I want to just kind of think through, I mean, so just so everyone knows, like Porch Fest in general, most places don't pay the performers because the idea is that it's supposed to be organic and spur of the moment. And
Most places don't have like a city arts council.
They don't
planning.
plan it this
It's just
way.
like grassroots.
Yeah, and the reasoning, and again, like, I'm not saying that we shouldn't pay anyone, but the reasoning is, and this is what we ran into as we were reviewing the applications for the musicians, is that then you start making choices because we saw some people who submitted and we were like, they don't seem that great, they're not good musicians, but it takes away from the magic of walking down the street and hearing someone who's legitimately really bad, who's involving and being part of this event. So that's where it gets a little complicated there.
Hey.
I'm really sorry to interrupt your meeting. We have a situation where the Parks and Rec Commission is meeting. Do you already know something about this?
Oh yeah, he came down. The elevator's
Oh.
not working.
Yes. So
Yes.
the person who we've been waiting for is a wheelchair user.
Yeah,
in the
we
the
just-
elevators.
You wanna
You already
switch?
heard all this? Would you be willing to switch rooms with us?
Absolutely.
We post a little note on the door for people, but that way the person can get in this door, which
Absolutely.
He's,
has accessible
he's,
ramp.
he's around here.
So maybe he's
He
on
went
the
that way.
He's around
Maybe
here.
it's
I think he left
He
the
left to
building.
go around the building, yeah.
I would maybe go try to catch him.
Okay, I'll do that.
Unless
You're
you're
willing to switch
texting.
rooms?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have to go? Oh, no, yeah, because, yeah. We're gonna
right,
close this to change rooms.
Bye.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.